In today's world, the internet has become an indispensable part of our lives. But have you ever reflected on the importance of your personal data while browsing the web? Just as it's crucial to safeguard your home and physical possessions, it's equally vital to protect your digital assets. In the following session, Ms. Pooja Shukla, Senior Lecturer at Hong Kong Metropolitan University, will expound on the significance of data privacy. She will also talk about the functionality of the Personal Data Privacy Ordinance in Hong Kong.
Hello everyone, I hope you are doing well. So we have got you another episode of Corporate Governance Seminar series in which we are going to discuss issues of data privacy and governance. I'm sure you know the basics of this topic because at any point of time your data is getting collected. Now, whenever I ask my students, do you think your data is important? Do you think your privacy is important? They always tell me, I am a very average person. Nobody is interested in me. I live a very average life. I go to the university, I go to my job, come back home, eat my dinner, stay with my family. I have nothing exciting in my life. Why would anyone be interested in my life? So my data is not important. Then I ask this from my students. Okay, how about this? You have my email ID, you have my WhatsApp. How about you send me all your email passwords, your bank statements? How about you send me your CCTV footage of wherever you live? Let me see that. Let me see what kind of email messages you have. Let me see what type of email messages you reply. Let me see where you are making most of your expenses when I see your bank statement. Let me see what kind of gifts or how costly gifts you are gifting to your girlfriend or boyfriend. The moment I say that, I'm sure you feel a little bit of this kind of discomfort. And you feel, maybe I don't want to share this. Because we think that only bad people need to be monitored because they are always planning to cause harm to the society. They are always planning some type of terrorist attack or any other criminal activity. Whereas you average people, maybe you don't need that. So in this seminar, I'm going to explain why your privacy matters. There is a very interesting quote by a philosopher called Rosa Luxemburg, and she said, "He who does not move does not know that he is chained." Now, using that logic, let me give you a scenario. Okay, picture this. You are in Causeway Bay and you meet someone you know, and that person asks you, so hi, how are you doing? How is your mental health now? That is not a good conversation starter, but maybe this is a weird person. And then this person says, I know you have been visiting a therapist in the last 6 months. How is that going? How is your therapy going? Now you are a little bit hesitant to share that information because this type of information you have not shared with anyone. And then this person says, oh, I know, you recently came back from a rehab center. Okay, that is something very serious. Even your parents do not know that. So this kind of sensitive information about you visiting a therapist, you coming out of rehab center, if someone else has it, not just for you, for anyone, it poses a big threat. In terms of stigma or stalking, or can lead to discrimination, or even a loss of a job, and to the extreme, even a physical violence. So you might be thinking all of these cooked up stories that I'm telling you are straightforward, coming from maybe some of the episodes of Black Mirror. But if I tell you that actually no, this is a real life story. There is a US company, a data broker called Kochava, which purchases vast trove of location information derived from millions of mobile services. And the information then is packaged into customized data feeds that match unique mobile identification numbers with time-stamped latitude and longitude locations. According to them, these data feeds can then be used to assist their clients to whom they are selling the data in advertising and analyzing foot traffic at their stores and the other locations. People like me and you are often unaware that these type of locational data is getting sold and purchased and shared by companies like Kochava. And we, simple people, we people who live average lives, have absolutely no control over the sale or purchase of this. So I hope now you understand that even if you live a very average life, you still have a right to protect your data. You have a right to demand that whoever is collecting your data is doing it responsibly. And one of the legal frameworks that we have in Hong Kong is called Personal Data Privacy Ordinance, which works in Hong Kong like a protective layer, which forces companies which collect your data to make sure that they are protecting, not sharing, not selling, and avoiding any type of unauthorized or accidental breach of that data. So as you can see, FTC sued Kochava for selling this data, which tracked people, which tracked their locational data, even in some extreme cases when they visited abortion clinics or places of worship or at other sensitive locations like domestic violence shelter or so. And this way, when they sold so much of data, I hope you can understand, at this point of time, whenever you are using any type of mobile phone or any electronic devices, they are collecting your locational data. Okay, please be honest. Have you ever gone through the terms and conditions of any application before you download them? I guarantee you, no. Maybe you have never read any of the terms and conditions. So each time you are sharing your data, whether you are doing it knowingly or unknowingly, whoever is collecting your data has a great responsibility to manage that data and protect that data. So you might be wondering, okay, so we live in a world where everyone has CCTV cameras, everyone has some type of electronic device, mobile phones, iPads, laptops. Even if you go to just withdraw some money from ATM, you have a CCTV camera, and I'm sure these are the basic things. Each time you step out of the house, someone is collecting your data. And as they say, data is the new oil. So do you think you can do absolutely nothing to change this? Do you think you can do nothing to protect the data that someone else is collecting? And this is the reason why we have a few legal regulations which govern that companies or organizations which are collecting your data, they act responsibly and they follow the law, and most importantly, they are governed in a very ethical standard which is acceptable in our society. Let us say if I tell you, okay, anyone who is attending this seminar is going to get free laptop. If I give you that free laptop, you go home without you knowing, when you switch on that laptop, the camera is collecting all the information of whatever is happening in the environment where you are in, maybe where you live or maybe in the campus. Will you be fine with paying this type of cost for your privacy? Do you think, oh, at least got a free laptop. In return, I'm willing to sell you my data. Do you think this is okay in a society like this, where I did not even inform you that this package of free laptop is actually coming at the cost of your personal data. So this first aspect of privacy is that privacy is your right, it is your dignity, it is your self-esteem. And any type of compromise on your privacy should not be tolerated. Privacy as secrecy. You have a right to live a peaceful life without anyone interfering. Sometimes, when we are so frustrated, we even want to switch off our mobile phones and we want to take rest. Just imagine if you were never able to do any of that, you were never able to switch off your surroundings, and someone was always collecting your data. In fact, let's do this. You got free laptop from me, and now I am collecting your data. But let's say I'm a very generous person. I tell you, I am collecting your data. I am watching you from that CCTV camera. Now, do you think the things that you were doing when you did not know that I was watching you, do you think you will continue to do those things after you know that I'm watching you? In other words, your behavior will change the moment I tell you that I am watching you. You will not be yourself. In fact, you would be doing things that you think the society expects you to. In fact, there was this research which was published which said that this kind of behavior in the society, when they know that they are being monitored, it changes the behavior of the society. In fact, even if you go to a prison and you just inform the inmates that you are collecting their data, there's a CCTV camera, their behavior immediately changes. So do you think you should continuously be under this pressure that you need to behave yourself even in your personal life? Okay, maybe if you are at your job, maybe you need to behave in a certain manner. But when you go home, do you think you should still be monitored about if you are picking your nose, what type of food you are eating, whom you are meeting? So remember, when we are talking of privacy, there are various aspects. The other aspect is privacy as anonymity. I want to share this experience. I have a favorite restaurant in Mumbai, and last time when I went there, one of my friends told me that this is not just your favorite restaurant, but also the favorite restaurant of India's richest man. So I said, oh really, so will I get a chance to meet him in this restaurant? So he said no, because each time he plans to come to this restaurant with his family, he has to book the whole restaurant, because otherwise people like me would be bugging him maybe for his autograph or so. So I hope you understand, average people like me and you who are not rich, who are not celebrities, our life is so much simpler. But this person, the richest man in India, cannot even simply go to a restaurant like a normal person and have a meal. So we have made this society in such a way that we have compromised on our privacy. The next concept is privacy as intrusion. If you know someone is collecting your data, maybe some type of CCTV camera is fixed at a place where it should not be. For example, you check into a hotel room. I'm sure you will be not comfortable if you knew that in your hotel room, someone is recording your movements inside the room. So you could see privacy as intrusion. The other aspect is privacy as against public interest. Some of you might question, I want that all the criminals, murderers, all the terrorists, it is the responsibility of the state to make sure that they monitor all their moves. It is important for the safety of where you live. So this is another aspect of privacy, that yes, things need to be monitored. At the same time, things do not need to be monitored every time, and there has to be a balance between these two aspects. Let us say when you came to attend this seminar, I take out my mobile phone and take your photo, and post it on my Facebook saying, I had a great day today. And all of you who attended this seminar, your faces are showing in that photo and it is all in my Facebook. Do you think I have collected your personal data? That is a very interesting concept, because we say when we show our face to someone, our face is a type of personal data. But do you think all photographs are a part of personal data? Let us analyze this interesting case. So this case, Eastweek Publisher Limited and others versus the Privacy Commissioner of Personal Data. In this case, this lady was walking in the streets, and a reporter from Eastweek Publisher Limited took her photo and published it with the caption, Japanese mushroom head. And the whole of the caption was kind of derogatory, and the advertisement said that her shoes look very incompatible to her style. And the biggest failure is her handbag. It is so awkward. It looks like she has mistakenly taken her mother's handbag. All the ladies, be aware of this. So in this advertisement, only her face was published in the magazine with this type of caption criticizing her style. After that, she felt that this type of matter caused her a lot of embarrassment and inconvenience. And since this photo was taken without her consent, published without her consent, she went and took legal help and she filed a complaint stating that this photo was taken without my consent, and that the publisher who published my photograph also made these adverse comments about me, which has caused me a lot of trouble when I made contacts with my business clients. So do you think in this case, when only a photo of a woman was published with none of her names, none of her identities, but just the view of this publisher that this person's hairstyle or this person's shoes or bag is not as per what the fashion is, do you think this kind of data was collected in a matter which breached the personal data of this person? In this case, you need to understand that the protection on privacy needs to strike a balance between privacy and press freedom. So there has to be some type of balance, because if you say that nobody should ever be able to take any photograph, whether it should contain anybody's face, or you could even say, oh, this is my garden, you should not even take a photo of this garden. What kind of society are we going to create? If we are going to offend everyone at every single point of time, what kind of society we are creating? This is going to interfere between how the society or the state or the press works. So although the freedom of media is of fundamental importance to our society, we need to make sure that there is a proper balance kept between. So if you just publish the face of a person with no details which track down the identity of that person, in that case, that may not tantamount to personal data published without your consent. The other aspect is unfair means of collection of personal data for news reporting. So for example, I'm sure you might have heard of this case because I always discuss in the class, Face Magazine Limited and the Sudden Weekly Limited. These are the two magazines. What they did was to go and install cameras, or these reporters probably they were hiding somewhere, and they took pictures of TVB artists when they were relaxing at home. Some of the pictures, they were almost naked. So just imagine, without your consent, without any information to you, if someone is taking such type of sensitive data, sensitive photos, without your knowledge or consent, are we creating a good society in the name of press freedom? I hope you understand that this type of data collection by unfair means cannot be put in the same bucket of press freedom. Since most of you are from Hong Kong, I am sure you have definitely heard of this octopus case, where Octopus had earned around 44 million Hong Kong dollars over 4.5 years from sharing of personal information. You register your Octopus card, maybe you give your email ID or your phone number attached to that card, and Octopus had been selling that information to other companies. Octopus company sold it to 6 other companies for marketing purposes. And after that, in the investigation, they also found that a lot of people, on an average basis, I think 1.3 times in terms of collection of number of times those 6 companies had contacted the people on phone using direct marketing. So in this case, you might have seen that Octopus actually violated the principles of data protection, including excessive data collection and unauthorized sale of cardholders' personal data without their consent. The other case is of California Fitness. As you can see, they were fined to fail to pay their Hong Kong staff salaries, which is a part of employment laws. They also were fined for breaching the data protection rules. In brief, what they did was they took copies of Hong Kong IDs whenever you went to buy membership. So you might question, why do they need your Hong Kong ID? Maybe they said that, oh, I need to make sure that you are at least 18 years of age or above, so you are qualified to sign this contract. Fine. How about these people, at the time of signing the contract, you show your Hong Kong ID to them, and the person who is assisting you to sign the contract manually checks your Hong Kong ID, your face, your photo, your name, and your date of birth to make sure that the data that you have filled up in the form is correct. So this way, if you are collecting copies of Hong Kong IDs which you do not need, you are collecting excessive personal data. So companies have to be very careful that they collect only the data that they actually need. And this is one of the safest way to make sure that you are not misusing the data or you are not collecting excessive data. If you think California Fitness maybe had some type of obligation, maybe from a bank from where they were receiving direct money, then California Fitness has to make sure that this type of information bank has provided to them, that California Fitness, I want you to collect all the details of photocopies, keep the photocopies of HKIDs of people so that I can verify that. If that is the case, then California Fitness can say yes, because bank asked me to do so, so I am doing. So if you are a company which is in this type of business of collecting personal data, make sure that you have a strong reason or evidence to collect that particular type of data. Otherwise, you will be collecting excessive data. Now let's go through the other famous cases of breach in Hong Kong. First is Cathay Pacific. In 2018, it caused breach of data of 9.5 million customers. And the reason was they failed to implement adequate data protection measures. Even HKBN, that is Hong Kong Broadband Network, in 2013, it affected 700,000 customers because of unauthorized access of a customer database by a former employee who leaked the data to a third party. Hospital Authority also in 2020, for 700 patients, the data got leaked because of unauthorized access of a database by a contractor. And finally, Hong Kong Police Force. In 2010, 3,700 officers were impacted because of the loss of an unencrypted USB drive which contained their data. Now let us analyze what type of data protection laws exist internationally. Of course, this is not an exhaustive list. This is just a little bit of information on different continents. Starting from North America, you have the California Consumer Protection Act, US Federal Trade Commissioner Fair Information Practices, and then Canadian Personal Information Protection and Electronic Documents Act. In Brazil, you have LGPD. In European Union, you have GDPR and the data protection directives. In UK, you also have UK's Data Protection Act. From Hong Kong side, we have Personal Data Privacy Ordinance and Trade Restrictions, Unfair Trade Practices Amendment Ordinance. So these are the 8 principles of OECD privacy guidelines. It starts from collection limitation principle, data quality principle, purpose specification, use limitation, security safeguards, openness, individual participation, and accountability. Now let us see what are the objectives of PDPO, which is Hong Kong's privacy ordinance. To protect the privacy interest of all the individuals, covers any data relating directly or indirectly to an individual, which is called the data subject, and applies to any person or organization. To ensure compliance of PDPO and the 6 protection principles, also called DPP. So let's see what are the penalties under PDPO. Of course, they have the power to put fines, which is a variety of civil and criminal sanctions, including fines and imprisonment. Then they can also issue enforcement notices, and also as individuals, you can also claim compensation from the organization responsible. Let's see what are the functions or powers of the Commissioner, which is the PCPD, to promote, monitor, supervise the compliance of the ordinance, secure the protection of privacy of individuals with respect to personal data, approve or issue code of practices on compliance of the personal data protection, specify classes of data users to submit annual returns and keep register for public inspection and making any type of recommendation and investigation in case of any type of breach. When we analyzed whether me taking your photo and posting on my Facebook would breach personal data or not, let us see what the law says. The law says personal data is any data relating directly or indirectly to an individual from which it is practicable for the identity of the individual to be directly or indirectly ascertained in a form which access or to processing of the data is practicable. So the example could be, if I write your name, your age, your Hong Kong ID number, your telephone number, your address, your genders, salary, occupation, nationality, and other medical records, or your employment data. Now let us see one of the landmark cases of Hong Kong's PDPO, which is Shau and the Privacy Commissioner of Personal Data. So in this case, the plaintiff, which is Shau, he received an unsolicited phone call from a company called Direct Marketing Services, or DMS, promoting its insurance services. Leung had not given his consent to DMS and argued that DMS had violated the PDPO. PCPD investigated and found that DMS indeed had breached the PDPO. So this case established the most important precedent in Hong Kong that individuals have a right to control the personal data, and the organizations must obtain their consent for direct marketing purposes. So let's start with the technicalities. When you share your data, are you the data user or the data subject? As per law, if you are providing your personal data, then you as an individual is called data subject. And the organization which is collecting your data for use is called data user. So this company or organization, whether they are working alone or jointly or in common with other persons, they are collecting your data, holding your data, processing or using your data. All of these categories are combined under data user. Now you would be questioning whether everyone who is collecting data has to follow these rules. The answer is there are certain exemptions available. Remember, we had discussed the rule of good people and bad people, or average people or bad people. So there are in certain situations, like situations of national security, for legal proceedings, or for crime prevention, or for the purposes of statistics and research, or your employment related data. These are all the exemptions to the use of personal data. Now let us quickly analyze the 6 basic data protection principles which we would be studying throughout this ordinance. First principle is about collection and purpose and means, which says that the data collected must be in lawful and fair manner, and you need to give specified information when you are collecting somebody's personal data. Second is about accuracy and retention. So your data has to be accurate and up to date and kept no longer than necessary. The third principle is about use. So you need to explain the purpose for which you are collecting the data, and you must obtain the prescribed consent if you are using in any other form. Fourth is about security and confidentiality, which means you must have proper measures in place for securing the personal data. Fifth is about openness. So you need to provide general information about the kind of personal data you would be holding and the main purpose for which your personal data will be used. The last one is about data access and correction. So you need to give individuals right of access to their personal data and also give the right to correct that data. Now let us start with the first principle, which is purpose and manner of collection of personal data. So make sure that your purpose is lawful, your means of collection is lawful and fair, and the data is necessary and not excessive, and it must be adequate. So on or before the collection of data, the data subject should be informed whether it is obligatory to supply this data and the consequences of this data, about the purpose of use and the classes of transferee. Further, on or before first time use, the data subject should be informed of the right to request this access and correction. So DPP 1.1 says that the personal data should not be collected unless it is for the lawful purpose, the collection is necessary, and it is adequate and not excessive. The other thing is it must be lawful and fair. You need to ensure that he or she is explicitly or implicitly informed on or before collecting their data, whether it is obligatory or voluntary, or the consequences upon failure to supply this data. Further, you need to explicitly be informed of the purpose for which you are collecting this data or using this data, the classes of persons to whom this may be transferred, and the rights of this person to request access or correction of data. The other important concept is called PICS, which means the Personal Information Collection Statement, which means a statement should be given to individuals for collecting information from them. Second concept is about accuracy and duration of retention of personal data. So personal data should be accurate, up to date, and kept no longer than necessary. So when you are collecting data, you need to take all these steps to ensure that your personal data are accurate, that inaccurate data are not used or should be erased, and you inform the third party of this type of inaccuracy. It should not be kept longer than necessary. If you engage a data processor, then you must adopt a proper contractual or other means to prevent any personal data from being kept longer than it is necessary. If you are engaging a data processor who is processing on somebody else's behalf, then make sure that they do not process the data for any other person's own purposes. Some of the examples are, if banks are collecting your data, if your address is changed, then the banks need to change your address if you have informed them of your new address as soon as possible or as practicable as possible, so that all kind of intimation sent from the bank to your new address is done as soon as possible and no other data is sent at your old address. Second example is, if mails are always returned, the bank should stop using those addresses immediately, and you might have noticed they generally send you some type of SMS or email that we had tried reaching you over email but your mail was returned, so please contact us. So this is a good practice. Next is accuracy. You need to make sure that your data are accurate. So for that, in your format of filling up data, you can make sure that the block capital letters are used to avoid any type of inaccurate data. Next is you need to make sure that you keep the data no longer than it is necessary. So for example, if you had a job posting for a vacancy and let's say 50 people applied for that job and only one was successful, then the other 49 people, you need to inform these unsuccessful applicants that we are going to retain your data, your CV with us if you do not have any objection. And even if you retain their data, you cannot keep this data for more than 2 years. The third principle is, unless the data subject gives prescribed consent on the use of personal data for a new purpose, otherwise the personal data should be used for the purpose for which they were collected. So without the prescribed consent, you should not use the same data for a new purpose, and prescribed consent for a new purpose could be obtained on behalf of relevant persons. For example, if you are a minor or a mentally incapacitated person. Further, the law also puts a great deal of pressure, and it says that you should not use the data even for the new purpose, even if the prescribed consent has been given, unless you have reasonable grounds to believe that the new purpose is clearly in the interest of the data subject. So remember, in this case, the law has put the onus on you that when you got the prescribed consent, you still had reasonable grounds to believe that new purpose is going to be in the interest of the data subject. Let's see a few examples. If an organization openly posts a CV of a job applicant on the notice board, it tantamounts to changing the use of the data. In fact, the organization should use the CV for recruitment purpose only and not disclose the personal data to another staff member. Principle 4 is about security. It says it requires the appropriate security measures to be applied on personal data, including data in a form which access to or processing of the data is not practicable. So all practicable steps should be taken to ensure that the personal data protected against unauthorized or accidental access or processing or erasure in terms of the kind of data and the harm it could result, what is the physical location of the storage, security measures in terms of any equipment, or making sure that the measures are taken to ensure the integrity, prudence and competence, and measures to secure the proper transmission of data. If a data user engages a data processor, again, you must adopt contractual or other means to prevent unauthorized or accidental access, processing, erasure, loss, or use of the data that is transferred. Let's see a few examples. You need to make sure that your staff which is processing the data is properly trained. You may need to make sure the employees who have the access to this data are reliable, and you need to make sure only authorized personnel should lock the file in a secured cabinet and use sealed envelope for transmission of this personal data. Any type of disposal of data, you need to shred all the confidential documents. And for electronic storage or transmission, you use encryptions. For data processing, if it is outsourced, you need to offer guarantee. You need to take guarantee from the person offering the service to you. Then devise an action plan to deal with the security breaches. And then high security measures on sensitivity data such as Hong Kong ID, health data, or credit card data, etc. Principle 5 deals with information to be generally available. It is about openness by the data users. So personal data policies and practices are made known to the public in terms of what kind of personal data they are holding and the purpose for which this personal data is used. You need to make sure that you ascertain the data users' policies and practices. You should be informed of the kind of personal data held and informed for the purpose for which the data is held. A few examples could be a privacy policy statement, which means you as a company, you are providing this statement of privacy policy, and it applies to collection, holding, use of recorded information about individuals as a whole. So this information, this policy statement will also include information such as accuracy and retention period, security, and data correction requests. And organizations need to make sure that these policies can be easily ascertained by other people. The best way probably is to put the policy on your website or your profile so that it is properly accessible by everyone. Data Principle 6 says access to personal data. Data subjects have the right of access to and correction of their personal data. And data subjects shall be entitled to ascertain whether a data user holds this type of personal data or request access within a reasonable time, not charge excessive fees, and in a reasonable manner, and be given reasons for refusal and objection to refusal and request the correction of data. Some of the examples are if the patients are requesting their medical records or employees requesting for their employment related records like their appraisal document or so. Access or correction requests upon receipt within a statutory period of 40 days must be acted upon. If you fail to do so, you need to provide a reply and state the reasons within 40 days. You should not charge more than the direct cost of complying with the access requests. Now let us quickly see the best practices or the policy guidelines. So all the data that is obtained should be processed fairly and lawfully. It is obtained only for specified purpose, should be adequate, relevant, and not excessive. It is accurate and up to date, kept not longer than necessary. You need to erase the personal data which is no longer necessary. You need to make sure that it is all stored and processed in accordance with the individual's rights, and process data in a secure environment, protect it against unauthorized or accidental access, and make sure the access and correction of personal data is allowed. You also need to be informed of the kind of personal data and main purpose of which the company is to be used. Let's say if you are Cathay Pacific and you realize that all those people who booked a particular flight, they have given you their names, their passport number, their probably Hong Kong IDs, their credit card details, their addresses, their mobile number, because you need to send them SMSs. Let us say you realize that because of the mistake of one of your employees printed this data and was going home, that employee forgot that piece of paper in the MTR. So that is when you realize that your data has been leaked out and it could land into wrong hands. So this is the situation when you realize that data breach had occurred. So what should you do? The first thing is you need to take steps to contain the breach immediately. You need to assess the risk. You need to assess what type of data has been lost, what is the amount of data, what is the likelihood of harm. If it is about credit card data, of course, it is very sensitive because anyone with the wrong intention could be using that credit card details. Also need to assess the potential impact on your organization. You need to notify the privacy commissioner. You also need to notify those individuals whose data was leaked. You need to notify them the nature of the breach, what type of steps you are taking to mitigate this harm. You also need to conduct an internal investigation and review and update the data protection policies. Further, you need to cooperate with the authorities in the investigation process. After you have understood the basics of Personal Data Protection Ordinance, now you would be wondering if this is a foolproof ordinance and once we have this law in Hong Kong, you can rest in peace. The answer is probably not, because there are certain drawbacks of PDPO2. The first, like some of you already think, there is limited enforcement power, and the exemptions are given for certain types of organizations. That means not everyone is put at the same level. Then there is lack of clarity on certain issues like the definition of sensitive personal data or the circumstances under which personal data can be transferred outside of Hong Kong. So there is limited protection on the cross-border data transfer. And the most important thing, the limited public awareness. A lot of the students, in fact, they don't even understand that there is actually a law which protects their personal data. In addition to PDPO, there are other protection laws. Of course, the list is not exhaustive. This could be Personal Data Privacy Amendment Ordinance, the Unsolicited Electronic Messages Ordinance, and the Code of Practice on Human Resource Management. When we are discussing the proper ecosystem of an organization, as you can see, every department in your company, in your organization, is actually holding some type of data, whether it is your IT department, your human resources, finance department, marketing department, risk department, compliance, legal, customer service, everywhere in every different department, your organization is holding some type of data. So you need to make sure that this organizational ecosystem is properly synced. You might think that legal department is always very careful, or maybe finance department is not that careful. So you need to make sure that you make proper policies or systems or procedures that all the departments in your organization are properly aligned to make this collective decision about protection of data. The other concept is called privacy by design, which means you design your organization's structure or the functions in such a way that you automatically have blocked out any type of breaches or data leakage. So for example, you need to make sure that your system is proactive and not reactive, which means you take all the preventative steps, not remedial steps. The other thing is you can use privacy as the default setting. So in case anyone has to share data, they must probably need some type of excessive authority or double verification or an approval from their department head or another department. Or privacy embedded into design, you need to make sure that when you are designing your policies and procedures, privacy is actually embedded into the design of those policies. Full functionality in terms of positive sum and not zero sum. So you need to make sure that you create a filtration system so that at the end, even if it falls through a few cracks, at the end still data is protected and you do not have to go back and forth to make sure that the data that you shared or within the company or an outsider or a third party is not following your proper policies and procedures. Next is making sure that the full life cycle protection is provided in terms of end-to-end security of your data, whether it is transmission from horizontal lines or vertical lines. Principle 6 says visibility and transparency. You need to keep these systems open for everyone to understand how this works. Principle 7 says respect for user privacy, and you need to make it user-centric. Now let us relate all these policies with corporate governance. What can we do? What kind of questions boards need to ask? So as you can see on your left side, this is the question that board should ask, and your right side shows a sub-question, which means when you ask that question, this is actually the impact, or this is the question that actually you are asking. So how are we dealing with the different standards that exist locally, regionally, or internationally? Corresponding question should be, how does that align with the company's corporate strategy? Second question could be, how effective are our compliance processes in meeting current data privacy regulations? Sub-question should be, are we allocating enough resources to support these compliance programs? How are we making data security a priority? The sub-question is, what type of policies and controls do we have in place to prevent improper use of sensitive data? Remember, for data protection, you must be proactive so that you do not have to go back in time and think this should never have happened. Your blockers, your policies should work as beta blockers so that it is able to block any type of breach of law or breach of a leakage of personal data. if at the onset data is protected, then you will not have to go back and take remedial actions. Now let us see what type of policies and procedures and controls you can have in your organization. So your policies should be about personal data, security, risk assessment, incidental handling, compliance, complaint redressal systems, and customer protection. Whereas your procedures should be about how to encrypt data, what type of system do you have about prevention of leakage of data, internal and external reviews, regular mandatory training, tailor-made training, customer feedback channels like hotlines, faxes, emails, websites, or what type of programs do you have to build rapport with your users. You could also have controls inbuilt in your organizations relating to segregation of duties. If one person is initiator, the other person could be the verifier. Or you could also use dual controls for different functions of extraction and destruction of data. You could have weekly or monthly briefings or meetings, stakeholder engagement or partnerships, regular meeting with these regulators, and exploring newer and newer ways to educate customers using maybe your videos, and attending regular seminars to stay updated on what is happening new in terms of the regulatory framework of the world. To conclude, let me share this very interesting fact with you. I'm sure you know who Mark Zuckerberg is. Yes, the Facebook guy. Do you know a few years ago he purchased a new house? What he did was, along with the same house, he purchased another surrounding 4 houses. You know why? Because he wanted to make sure that nobody is monitoring what he does at his residence. So you can understand that the person with whom you are sharing most of your information, most of your data, knows the value of surveillance or monitoring. Phrase that we say that if restaurant owners are not eating at the same restaurant, maybe the food is not good. So make sure that you keep the security or the privacy of your data, of your personal data, in your own hands. As we advance, we understand that there are so many issues in data privacy, because each time you step out of the house, or even while probably attending my seminar, either you are watching it on phone or your TV, you must be using some type of electronic device. Have you ever noticed sometimes when you have a conversation with a friend, and maybe in 1 or 2 days about the same product, you see an advertisement on your maybe Facebook or Instagram or any other website that you use? Our devices are definitely listening to us. We need to make sure that these devices and the companies or the organizations behind these devices are protecting the data. They are being transparent with us in terms of telling us what type of data they are protecting. I hope you understand that people say that internet is not a good place to be. But do you think all the people who are not even on the internet are safe? Maybe your grandmother does not use a smartphone, but do you think her data is safe? So you need to think it from the perspective of the principle of minimalization, where you share minimum information with others so that you need to think less about what to worry. Since here we are dealing with technology, and it is nearly impossible to deal with the changing use of technology and the new risks associated with it. So there are various issues which probably still need to be resolved, and law alone may not be helpful. So what are those issues that we need to address? First, of course, is the complicated issues due to the new risks that we have in our environment because of the use of technology. Second is privacy infringement occurs more frequently than ever. Probably every few days you see one or the other company or organization breaching some type of personal data protection law. And the other thing is, this type of issue is so sensitive that it gets a lot of media coverage. And this is why organizations need to be very careful about how it impacts their reputation or their going concern concept. What type of plans have you made to make sure that you are able to protect the personal data that you are collecting? The solution to these is probably not the laws, but self-imposing concept of governing yourself in terms of best moral duty that you could think of in terms of ethics, and also establishing some type of code of conduct to fix accountability within your organization, and within the senior management taking an active role in terms of controlling how data protection policies, how stringent or how secure they are within the organization. I hope you have learned the importance of privacy in this seminar, and next time when I ask you, do you think your personal data is important, you will never tell me that you are an average person and you have nothing to worry about. Thank you very much for your time, and I will see you in the next episode.